following program is sponsored in part by To a Woman's Heart. The thoughts and views expressed by the following production don't necessarily reflect those of the network or any sponsors. Rainbow Room Publishing Live, starting in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Welcome to Collections by Michelle Brown, Blog Radio. I'm your host, Michelle Brown. This is a podcast connecting people living between the lines, standing boldly in the crosshairs of their intersectionality and creating change. Since 2017, we've shared the stories of over 100 individuals from every walk of life from across the country and beyond. Collections by Michelle Brown Blog Radio partners with nonprofits, creatives, and other organizations to spread the good news that we're all stronger together. Our current partners include Lupus Detroit, the Esteem Awards Pride Index, and our guest tonight. Eddie S. Pierce is the founder of Rainbow Room Publishing. Currently a resident of Texas, Eddie received his Master of Fine Arts in Creative Writing from Chicago State University. He's published his own works and is currently overseeing the company's numerous publishing services while expanding its offerings in an effort to provide more opportunities for new authors and professionals in the creative arts. Eddie's not a stranger to our podcast and returns today to bring us up to date, not just on his activities, but those of Rainbow Room Publishing. Eddie, welcome back to Collections by Michelle Brown Blog Radio. How have you been?
I've been great. It's just great to hear your voice. I love that we're always getting this stuff together and we do all these emails, and I just get happy when I finally hear your voice.
Oh, yeah. It's really, it's sort of like, it's always great when you do it, and sometimes you even forget that you haven't talked to each other for a while. But
right.
Yeah. So I'm telling you, and what I always love talking about you. Not only are you an author, but then you have taken that and taken what you've learned, honing your craft. You help other people, and then you just branch out and look for more opportunities to support others, myself included. And I think that's really great. So
thank you.
How's the writing going, or do you get a chance to do much of it anymore?
It's very interesting that you say that. It's pretty minimal in light of a lot of the other things that I'm doing. It reminds me of a teacher in college who kind of once expressed that, she's a world-renowned author, Dr. Sandra Opoku. I believe she's still with Chicago State. But, it's kind of hard to be creative when you're reading a lot of other people's stuff. And I'm in a similar place in that with the publishing and collaborating with other people, I'm reading a lot of things, but then I have it doubly, kind of the way she does, in that I do teach online. And so I read a lot of papers, humanities papers and that sort of thing. So carving out the time can be tricky, but honestly, most recently, I got a great outline together that will wrap up the first series of books that I did, starting 13 years ago.
Wow. Now, I know your history, and now you say you're wrapping up that series from 13 years ago. Can you Tell us about that journey from where it began 13 years ago up to how's it going to, without giving anything away, what's the closure that's going to come?
To give the backstory, well, actually, I've always, as a child, did writing. It was more of a hobby. And then professionally, it started maybe almost 10 years out of college, actually doing my master's. I was ironically on a flight to Las Vegas from Chicago and applying for a job with a higher institution, education, what is it? An institution of higher learning, I should say, UNLV. Being, very much the person that goes back to what they know, I didn't want to be bored on the plane. And as a kid on road trips, I would write sometimes. So I wrote a short, maybe 20 some odd page story. And then when I decided to pursue my master's, I saw that I needed, this would be a master's of creative writing, fine arts, and creative writing. And I needed 40 pages to complete the application for the program. And at that time, I also learned that I needed 100 pages of a creative thesis, as we call it. So it would be our equivalent to the doctoral thesis. And you need 100 pages. So ultimately, I saw the 20 pages and said, hey, I'll add 20 more to get into the school. And by the time we get out, I'll have added the other 60 or so pages to reach that 100 pages. What it resulted in was me fictionalizing my life as a young Black boy raised in Chicago, pretty conservative Christian family, who also learned, found out as he grew up that he was gay or same gender loving. I like that term a little better. It has African American connotations and an origin. But I also learned that I had contracted HIV. And so writing that was an academic purpose. It served an introspective purpose. It brought a lot of healing to me. And if you can imagine, you're writing for something that is as important as a thesis, you're going to reread it over and over again because you're editing, right? And so when I saw it helping me, it occurred to me this could help someone else. And so thanks to the learning I got in my undergrad as well as the master's, I learned that the publishing world at that time was really shrinking in the sense of print publishing. And that when it comes to publishing houses, you really have to have something, honestly, in my opinion, more than even a great story to get in the door with a Penguin or a Random House. You have to have a following. You basically have to come to them showing them that this book will sell without too much effort on their part. I mean, they're going to market, they're going to do junkets, that sort of thing. But they want to know that, you have that magic number of followers that will buy this book and turn it into a New York Times or an Amazon best-selling author on a book. And so I saw that very on and decided, hey, my shot is better at going independent. And so longer story, less long, I did go through a publishing service for my first work, Love Something Infinite, which was published and released on my birthday, November the 12th, 2011. And because I saw that I actually did the publishing in the sense of I paid for it, I orchestrated it, I went outside of the services that they provided to make sure that it came out the way I wanted. God and I were having a talk, and he said, you're a publisher. Now you need a publishing company. Longer story about how we get to Rainbow Room Publishing. If we want to talk about it later, we can. But I already had the name, didn't have to debate on it at all. It has a great deal of significance. And so the company was launched the same night that that first book was released. And then I followed up with the second book, Love from Behind. Very catchy title, but it's meant to be. And that was done, I believe, the following June. No, actually, that would have been June or July of 2013. That process of working with that other company informed me more about what I could do with my company. It was very much, if anyone is listening is familiar with the Old Testament tales, and it's something that I just heard recently again about the idea of King David being a king before he was a king. He was anointed. He was called a king, but Saul was still the king. And David was kind of the king in waiting, which was definitely weird for anybody that knows how that stuff goes. Shouts out to my Game of Thrones fans. But the king's children are the next in line. But at any rate, it was very similar to me that God was telling me, you're a publisher, change your handles to say publisher. You are a publisher. But I was like, well, I'm not publishing anybody else. And it would be about 5 to 8 years before I figured out how to do that. I actually published my third book, Love Changes, which is part of that same series that fans actually coined the Love series, and then followed that up with a publishing guide. Upon completion of the publishing guide, that was when I really started to take on clients. So yeah, it's been a journey, and looking forward to, I believe I keep counting it wrong, but I think this is the 13th or the 14th anniversary coming up this November the 12th. And we got a couple of things planned for that.
You know, one of the things I think that, and I've talked to other authors, particularly same gender loving authors, and it's often like they want to start telling like their story, but then and at some point the light goes on that as I tell my story, it might help someone else. And I mean, even as recently, I met someone who was just like, you know, like he was like early 20s, and it was like where he had been keeping these journals, and then one of the someone said, you know, he thought about it and he started to put it in, and then that thing, like, you know, well, realizing I'm not the only one, and it might help someone else. Do you find, and with the different authors who you've met, many who I'm sure were inspired by your story, that's what they're in the back of their mind is like, if I tell this, it might help someone else?
You know, it's amazing that you bring that up. A number of the authors that I have been working with over the last maybe 3 years or so, even including maybe even going back 5 or 7 years, my first publishing client, who was actually also first ghostwriting client, it was very much that everyone, they saw the importance of their story. And you know, it was very similar that, yeah, their hearts just kind of went out to all these other people. You know, none of us, to be quite honest, are in this for, you know, the riches, although they look like they might be coming soon. But it was always that, much like my own dream, and how Rainbow Room Publishing came about, I love to say that it was never a one dream or even a two-part dream. It was, you know, two dreams kind of in one, that I needed a vehicle to get my own work out. And once I kind of plowed that field and blazed that trail, I saw, oh, okay, if nothing else, even in those first few years before publishing other people, I just gave away the advice. These are the things that I did. These are the things I would tell you to stay away from. And, you know, so when we got, you know, through with like the nuts and bolts of everything, of course, we would always get to, you know, well, why this story? Why are you putting this one out? Why are you sharing it? And to be quite honest, all of them, particularly those who either went straight autobiography, or those who, like me, fictionalized things, it was always this thing that they saw the value of their own story and just knew that it would reach someone else. And to all their credit, it has.
You know, you mentioned how publishing has changed, and it continues to change. I mean, you know, It continues to change.
God help us with the AI. But anyway, carry on. I'm sorry.
I know. So, but from like when you went into it back in the day on your birthday to where you see it now, how has that impacted Rainbow Room Publishing? You know, good, bad, indifferent.
You know, I'm not the consummate optimist, but it's just one of those things, and I think you can relate, that you can be so into the work, you just don't have time for the foolishness. You just really don't. It's not until you've done the book maybe and had the celebration that you kind of look back on like, oh, that was hard. But for me, if anything, it just constantly, in a very good way, in a fun way, challenged me. I felt that, the independent publishing world, it just almost exploded. It's so, for lack of a better word, saturated. And so, we all, even if we were all picked up by publishing houses, the objective would always be for us to stand out, right? And so, like I said, and not to discourage anyone, but it takes more than a great story. Now, I will say, though, that the great story, as I tell a lot of people, and I'm sorry if I'm getting off track, that great story is what inspires everything else. That's where you get the title. That's where you get the cover. That's where you get the marketing plan. That's where you get the idea of who your target audience may be. That's how you find a Michelle and get on an interview. So, that's the basis of it. But, I feel like in a lot of respects, long are gone the days, at least until Rainbow Room Publishing is that big, but kind of long are gone the days where you just write the story and you give it to someone and everything is done for you and you're just sitting back counting royalties. So, for me, it has always been, and I think I learned this very early on, we're all selling books, right? What makes us stand out? And one of the things that God told me was you have to give them an experience. That's how I got in my current slogan that, at Rainbow Room Publishing, we don't just sell you a book, we give you an experience. And so if nothing else, I was always looking at even the release event is an experience. When you do the speaking engagements, in person, virtual, what have you, you're giving an experience. You're not just giving them the book, And so I would say with all the people out there, and please know I'm pretty much in my own lane, but I do see and celebrate contemporaries. Craig, the writer, I think last name is Smith. It's so many names in my head right now, but he's someone that I love to watch, and other people that are doing amazing things across social media and YouTube, and they're always doing something really, really creative. It's never just, here's my book, please buy it, or even, here's my book and I'm going to read a piece of it. They've incorporated, all of us, honestly, we've incorporated live action trailers. We've incorporated originally composed and commissioned music. Some people are doing things more with animation. And so I think that it's definitely a case of necessity being the mother of invention, but in a sense that it's really, it's enhancing the field, in my opinion, that field. We're not just, no knock to our elders and our literary bearers, but we're doing so many more things than they were doing then, and doing it out of necessity, to be honest, but it turns, in my opinion, to a much more valuable product because, yeah, you got the book, but you saw something, you heard something, you got to interact with the person. And now that we do everything virtually, that can happen whether the writer is in Japan and you are in Australia, so we have so much of that going on. And I feel that it has been good for us in a sense. I don't know what it says for the traditional publishing houses. I know they're going to have to get more creative. They're going to, in my opinion, start looking up at more of us that have been doing our thing independently, just because on some level the celebrities can only do so many books. And just the idea that, for me personally, and I can imagine a lot of other people the same way, how many times you want to see author A do the same story over and over and over and over and over again? I want to taste something new.
I think that one of the things that's good about it is that, people, I read this something and someone was saying like, well, with AI, you can give them certain things and, keywords, what you want to, and boom, they can give you a story. You can crank out all these books using AI and you're not really doing it. But like you said, it's that experience. If I cannot price out something that might have hit all these parts,
right?
But if I don't, I'm the one that's selling it. Someone's going to go, and it is. Someone go like, oh, I talked to Eddie. Eddie is so interesting. I want to know about his books. So AI can't it might help. You might be able to use Grammarly to clean it up, but it can't take the place of that creative spark that comes from the individual.
And the interpersonal piece. It honestly even reminds me of, the convenience of, my books are listed on Amazon in addition to on my own website, but you're not getting an autograph if you go to Amazon. You have to come find me, so you get that personal touch, and if you wouldn't mind, I just want to throw in a plug on that AI and that situation. People have, talked to me about it for years and asked my opinions and that sort of thing. And I've always said that it's a tool like anything else. A hammer is a great example. A hammer, can build a whole house. It can build a bridge. It can build a boat. But used in an improper manner, it can be very destructive. And I feel that AI has those possibilities, but one of my largest concerns has always been the ownership. The ownership. If AI makes it and you used Google's AI versus who else's AI, what are the likelihoods? And let's be honest, in America especially, we've been a sue crazy society forever. We sue over anything. And it's very important for people to know the distinction between being sued and having lost a lawsuit. Being sued is just being, called on the carpet, so to speak. And that doesn't even mean you get to a lawyer. That doesn't even mean you get to a mediator or anything like that. But the result that we're always afraid of, losing everything, losing the suit, two different things. But wherever, for me personally and the people that I advise, wherever we can totally rule out any possibility of that sort of thing, we do. Right? And it's even in the contract. Let's talk about business. It's in my contract. When you sign that contract, you are indemnifying me. You're saying that I'm not responsible if what you submitted to me was not your own work or something you have the legal ownership of. And as a result of that, at any point, the contract can be terminated or at least halted. The progress of whatever we're doing can be halted until you resolve that issue. And so, we already had all of that kind of stuff to be worried about, right? Whether somebody said we plagiarized them, now you're adding something that people are using quite voraciously when you think about AI. I just noticed now that on your Facebook posts, it will pop up with suggestions. AI is writing people's Facebook comments. And so I'm always worried about that. And, as I talked to one person, I said, well, I can see it being, because you mentioned Grammarly, which is something I do employ. And to be honest, I like Grammarly a lot because of the fact that it doesn't just give you the suggestions or even make the changes. As I explained to everyone, you got to approach all of this like a calculator. The calculator won't just give you the answers. You have to always be mindful of the human component and the fallibility of the human component, including the person who made the calculator. So the calculator may be flawed, but the idea being you still have to check your work. You still have to, I heard it in the sermon today, you don't just get the task done, you're responsible for the outcome as well. And so when I think about all of that, I love that Grammarly is not just giving you the suggestions, but it's an opportunity to learn. I've said it proudly on several occasions. I got a Bachelor of Arts in English in undergrad, not a Bachelor of Science. Now, we both have a base level of grammar that we should know, and punctuation and spelling and phrasing and that sort of thing, but it gets to be a wilder animal, that wild stallion that you just jump on and hope you can ride when it comes to you writing creatively. Because there is so much poetic license you can take, but you still have to be mindful of the laws, the rules. You may have heard the saying before, too, that, it's one thing for you to break grammatical rules when it's been well established that you know them. So I talk very proper in an interview like this, but on a Facebook post, I will use all of the ain'ts and taints and whatnot. But people know, oh, well, I read Eddie's other writing. Every other post looks like something he might have had in the essay because I'm a bit of a grammar nerd. But all of that being said, I have concerns about how people are using it. I have concerns about over-reliance on anything, to be quite honest. And just that, I guess I really want to speak on it because I just want people to be mindful that as they're doing this, make sure you are checking that there's no way somebody, because even if you use the AI and you use the Grammarly or whatever you used, and someone comes up and says, hey, you stole from us, you still put some work into that. You still poured something into that. And I would hate for someone to lose that because they didn't take maybe 1 or 2 extra steps. In the case of AI, a friend and I talked about it when it came to writing. And we both were like, well, it's kind of like Grammarly. If they give you some words, you still can come back and put it in your own words. That, in its effect, is yours now. It's very similar to musicians. If they do a cover of someone else, but they change the melody and they actually play the music themselves, that's an original arrangement. You're safe legally. But this idea of people just saying, hey, I'm going to put in some prompts and boom, give me a book. And honestly, I see it a lot more with these book covers, which is, it's just not my cup of tea. I need not only for it to be an expression of me, which you can kind of get to, not even kind of, you can get to with these tools. But as I've been looking at this subject most recently, and I'm wrapping this up, I promise, I get so much from the creative experience. I get so much out of that. It's very similar to the person who works out. I'm just so much more pleased with the outcome, even if it took 5 years and 5 drafts, or even, God help me, I put out 3 versions of the book and it's bad and I don't get it right till the 4th time. I get so much out of that, and I appreciate it so much more because it's that much more of me put into it versus I'm putting in a prompt saying, hey, ChatGTP, I need a picture of 2 Black girls for this cover, and it just popping out something or making something. Same with the text. So I guess I'm just kind of putting it out there. I'm not against AI entirely, but I do want us to be mindful because Skynet, if you remember the Terminator movies, Skynet took over everything. I've been jokingly calling it Skynet for the longest, and it's taking over everything. And the idea of it taking that much more away from the creative experience is unnerving.
And, and part of being creative and writing it, and selecting how you want to say something, it gives the tone, it sort of gives the nuance of what it is that really makes it your own, and what you also, what you're trying to express to the reader, what you want them to feel, that if you just went like, the door was open as opposed to the door was slightly ajar. You suddenly see different. So that's important that I often tell people, you might go through and they might tell you these easy things, but what are you trying to do? And where the beauty of books is that in their mind, you're hearing this and you're playing a movie in your mind. And what visuals do you want them to see?
Yes. Yes. Totally agree.
So I have a question. Now you've got a bachelor's but you also have a master's. How important is that? How has that influenced not only your writing, but what you're telling to new people who are coming back to you, having seen it let's face it, where you're going through often a Eurocentric viewpoint on writing, because that's who started making all the universities, so that's what they're teaching. But how does that help you, particularly when you're talking to someone to where it's like, you can see what it, like you said, you understand about what grammar is and how, where a comma goes and how it can change the meaning of a sentence. You get that because of that, but it influences it. As a publisher, how do you take what you learned? If you got that paper up on the wall that I know your mama's proud of, she said, my boy did that. But how do you take it and then help a new writer to sort of get it? Because I also believe everyone doesn't have to. I've read people who have written really incredible things and don't have those degrees, but they have that spirit in their heart. How do you take what you're bringing it from both sides? How do you take seeing the world of writing from both sides, from the personal writing to what you knew, what they're looking for when you're what got you those degrees, how do you bring that into publishing?
Excellent questions. And when I tell you we are so in sync as always, because you kind of answered with some of my thoughts. First and foremost, and I had this conversation with some family not too long ago, and I quite literally said, that piece of paper doesn't mean anything if you're still able to do what you want to do in life. Period. That's it. Can you still get that experience, whatever the field may be? Then, yeah, college isn't necessarily what you need to do. College, for me, was a number of things, but I will constantly say, especially when it came to undergrad, that, and I think, honestly, this is the way it's supposed to be, that, we come out of high school, if I think back on how the school system and just that whole process is kind of shaped from the ancient Greeks. And the idea there was just that we had well-rounded individuals. Can everyone read? Can everyone count? Can everyone be wise enough and literate enough to know the laws, the rules? Can they be self-sufficient in society as well as contributing to society? But when it comes to college, and I will even just say anything beyond that high school level, because that's trade school, that's associates, bachelors, what have you. At that point, you're more so refining what you learned, ideally, if you learned it in high school. And we won't talk about the failings of some school systems, but I feel that from my experience and a lot of people I know, and I'm very proud to talk about the Chicago public school system, at least of my day, but a lot of us, I'm looking at folks, oh my God, if they wanted to be, they could be Supreme Court justices, but they don't want it. I'm looking at news broadcasters, even my high school, Whitney M. Young High School, granted it's magnet school, but still public. And, so by the time I got to college, I will say that I was short on note-taking skills and some things like that. But as far as just writing or acquiring information, digesting, and then being able to put that information in your own words, largely what I've learned, especially as it relates to writing and even into publishing, was modeling. When you think about how we learn to read, we typically, we learn the alphabet, we learn the sounds, we learn the words, but the subject matter, half the time it's history, it's fiction. In a lot of cases, it's holy text. So your Bible, your Quran, your Torah. We're being exposed to language and its uses, right? But then you go from there to, okay, now you're thinking about the writer or what have you, and you're in college, undergrad or what have you. Now you're just refining that. You're finding better ways to say things. You're increasing your vocabulary. You're ideally getting more world viewpoints to make one thing that's very important for me with all of the things I do. Is there a universal piece? Can anyone with an open mind look at what I'm writing and find something they can connect to? Very important. But that's something I felt that I got in the undergrad experience, a Bachelor of Arts in English with concentration in, well, it was a dual concentration, world literature, and I think the other was creative writing. I think that was an option. And then I also had a minor in psychology because I was just interested in the way the mind works, and that helps. I know Senia's talked about this, but just that idea of you kind of have to know how people work, move, think, their motivations to write characters, And so I feel that you get not only more of the same, but a more refined version of that teaching. For me, because I was looking at English and honestly did not know what I was going to do with it. Everybody said, you're going to teach or you're going to do journalism. I said, I hate both of those right now in my life. I don't want to do either one. And ironically, I've ended up doing both and actually enjoyed them to a degree. But I didn't know what I was going to do with writing. I had no idea. The scariest thing in your life, you're about to graduate and you need to go get a job and you did all of this and spent all this money, even if a lot of it was scholarship money or what have you. And now you're supposed to be that well-rounded individual that goes off into the world, And, but that experience was where I first was also beginning to learn about the publishing world. So then you fast forward about 5 or 7 years when I go for my master's at Chicago State. And beautiful thing there, as opposed to high school and undergrad, high school, if I could back up again, I was exposed to a lot of world lit, Brit lit, American lit, but because the school had a very large African American contingent, African American lit was mixed off in. And I think I did have the option because we kind of were taking, honestly, the way even we registered for classes, it was like being in undergrad when I think back on it. But you could specialize. If you needed those English credits, you could do African American lit. So I did African American lit, and I did, I think, African American history. And so I got who I am, how I fit in this whole piece, right? And that helped me to then, honestly, not just write myself, but write my viewpoint as I looked off into those other places and look for the commonalities. If I want an Irish person to read this, to pick this up, to buy this, what would they want to know about? Get to a piece, and we'll talk about it later in one of my books, but I did a piece called Scot-Free. If you're familiar with the phrase, it means that you kind of got off. You got away with something. And Scott is in it, and I have a footnote in the book, but basically talking about the origins of that and it coming from Scotland. And the Scots, well, it was kind of in that whole, let's say, Celtic family, but the idea that a Scot was a form of currency. And so, I'm talking about something, a phrase that we use all the time as Americans, a lot of, well, probably not as much anymore, but African Americans know it, and a Scot would see it. But it's something that I learned to do being in that environment where I'm learning with, even though it was a predominantly white institution. And yes, that's a struggle, but it gave me a wider view. Now, when you get to Chicago State, predominantly everything is Black, right? African American, capital B. Thank you, New York Times, for capital B Black when we're talking about Black people versus the color of something. But it was all African American lit. We actually had a list of 100 books that we had to have finished by the time we finished that degree. And they were all African American books. And thankfully, because of all the classes we were taking, we were reading those books. And the papers we had to write, we could go to research those books. So I was immersed in that, learning to refine the writing, but that's why I really got the publishing piece. We actually had an internship where we had to work with a publishing company. And thankfully, the staff there, even to this day, I don't know everyone there anymore, very dynamic. And one of them had an actual physical publishing house on the south side of Chicago. And so we had the opportunity to intern with people that knew the business. We had to research the business. And one of the things I'll never forget was just, even in the class, we learned so much about how other ethnicities, best example I can remember was a Jewish publication, magazine. And in it, it's written by Jewish people, the content is Jewish people, and it's for Jewish people to buy. And he was explaining to us, and I've been amazed by this forever, that here's a people that has really, really found a way to control their own identity. No one will ever be able to tell them who they are because they're constantly writing their story and putting it out. But then when you look at it from a marketing standpoint, you're going to always have a customer base. So I was getting the business side and the art side. And so when it gets to, now I'm doing it, it's, honestly, for me, and I'm not trying to be an angel or say that I am. We were talking earlier, and we can put it in there. I was fighting with a plumbing situation. Once I learn how to figure this thing out, I'm going to tell the next person. It's just, maybe some of it's the Christian upbringing. I found out about, let me tell you, I found out about something good I want to tell the next person. I got an interview with Michelle. I'm sending her 50 more people. Hopefully she takes them all, kind of thing. And so it just naturally, I think it was the appreciation for being taught, for what I learned, and what I know it could do for other people. But I do believe that, what we know, like you said, we both know a lot of people who didn't go through that whole quote unquote formal process of learning. And even for that, I still am learning a lot from the School of Hard Knocks and just experience, just trying stuff, throwing stuff up on the wall and seeing what sticks, but the principles that I got, especially from Chicago State, that's where I even learned the idea of you need a book trailer, some sort of video. It can be you reading. It can be a picture with music. It can be like a movie, a short film, kind of thing. But that's where I really learned a lot of the things that add value, as I'm always even telling my clients. We have to look at this book, but we need to look at where we can add value. They're paying $20 for a book. What value can we add that is not detrimental to you, but makes the experience, not only the idea of them wanting to buy the book, but making the experience so good that they want to tell other people, no, you can't have my copy. You need to go get one, and then we can talk about it together. And by the way, Eddie's going to do a streaming event, so let's get on that and talk about it.
Okay, so how do you pick who's going to come under the Rainbow Room umbrella? Who you want to work with? What is there a personality, a certain work ethic, a certain vision that you're looking for? If somebody comes up and says, they want to be part of the Rainbow Room family.
And that's honestly, I get excited anytime someone, wants to publish with me, but I'll have to actually put it out there too that, they always have the option if, they want my imprint on it or not. I'm going to do certain things to help promote that would, obviously let them know that there's a connection to the company, but they're not necessarily obligated, let's put it that way, to be under the umbrella. But first and foremost, main criteria is definitely on the website is that the things we won't touch, which honestly is a succinct enough list. No defamation, no hate speech, nothing that is promoting falsehoods, just all of that negativity rolled up in there. So it's the subject matter can be anything. And it's just a coincidence that the people that I know and the closest to and that trust me the most happen to be Black, or in some cases happen to be same gender loving or some member of the LGBTQ IA plus community. But honestly, I'm actually looking at a client that's British. We're doing some other amazing things together. And when I say British, he's over there. Okay. But, so it's open, it's very, very big tent politics like the Democratic Party espouses to be. I think I could say that and be safe. So, we have that. But then, of course, I'm looking at from the business side of things. And I do this a lot. And honestly don't notice that I'm doing it, but it's always beneficial, that there's some very simple tests and tasks that a person who, wants to come as a client, who is someone I'm considering collaborating with, have to, accomplish. And those things let me know very early on how this person is at following instructions. Is it difficult for them to do it? Do they just not want to do it? That sort of thing. And so that gives me an idea of, okay, this is how much work we have to put into this. I'm either A, not going to take it, B, I'm going to charge you more, or C, okay, we can work some around, but I'm still, showing them I'm throwing the work back in your face that you have to do, which largely in a lot of cases is the writing. And even if that means that you work with a writing coach, who I have people that I farm that out to, or you work with a ghost writer. And even with that, I have to tell my own family members, you're not going to ask me to sit in a room with 12 boxes of news clippings and photos and VHS, this, that. No, you have to get organized. You have to figure out even what you want to talk about, because all of that stuff does not fit what you want to talk about, for one thing. But it's the idea that you have to come to me with something we can work with, something we can grow on, something we can clean up. But you're not just going to come in and say, Eddie, I need you to write my whole book. And, I'm just, look, if I get to the place where I have a staff that can do that, but it's going to be some high dollars. And even with my clients, I think one of the reasons they like me and they come back is because I honestly am constantly showing them, like, now, here's the thing. If you want me to do X, Y, and Z, it's going to cost this. Can you do X? That would save you some money. And I have to think about it even from my standpoint. I'm a one-man shop. That's less work for me to do. And I still get the ultimate goal, which was, yes, I made a little money, but I also worked with this awesome client. And so best example even of that is when you go into my website, I have I have a contact form, but then I also have a submissions page. There's a page where you see the services, you see descriptions of the services, you see examples of the services in the form of videos, pictures, that sort of thing. But the contact form, and we're all kind of used to doing this now in this day and age, you're filling in your name, your email, the title of your work, and some particulars about your work that gives me an idea of the scope of your work. One other thing that I look at, and I don't think it's old school, I think it's still a good practice and still widely practiced, do not send me a manuscript. Liability. Do not send me. I'm going to delete it immediately. I'm not going to look at it. And that's even me teaching. If you don't work with me and work with someone else, do not give them a manuscript. Especially if you have not copywritten it yet. Do not send anyone anything, because I know we get all excited and, we really on some level too want to sell ourselves to the person. I'm not asking for all of that. But a lot of the things I'm asking for are very simple tasks that give me an idea, or as a writer, as a client, and even beyond being a client, the kind of representation you would be having associated yourself not only with my name, but everyone else that's associated with my name. And so if they can't fill that out, we don't need to talk. We don't need to talk. And even one of the things in there I asked them to do is to describe the work in so many words. That's your elevator speech. Once you've done that, you know how to talk about your story in less than 2 minutes. You're prepared to sell your story to everybody, even if we have to dress it up a little bit. But if you can't tell me what your story is about, that's another sign that I don't think we need to necessarily continue this conversation. So I've learned a lot of that, like I said, from life experience, professional experience, school of hard knocks, but yes, definitely with some of those teachers from undergrad and grad. And I've been very fortunate that when I say these teachers have all won awards all over the world, they regularly get visiting professor opportunities. They regularly get to do the writing residencies as a participant or as the host. And they're getting paid for them to go, or they get paid to go to conduct it. And so I know that, I'm just really tapping into a lot of the professional things that, to be quite honest, they didn't necessarily spell out. It's just what I saw at the time and still being in association with them.
Now, from a Black perspective, I mean, I know that you've gone on, we've talked about the, working with other people, but you've got a series out there from a Black perspective, the people. How did that come about? Give me your elevator speech from a Black perspective. How did it come about? What is it about?
You got me there. Okay, so timer going. From a Black perspective, honestly, it was born out of my desire to experience the Harlem Renaissance. This collection of just Black creatives and professionals that just came together and made a movement and stamped it on the world and stamped it on history. And so when it came to this, honestly, it originally started out as a writing contest. Different people would, pay the little $25. They would send in their works. I would decide who all would get to go in it. No one applied. As I was looking at it and honestly getting a little discouraged, God was like, well, a bunch of writers if you just need to fill a book. And so I thought about it, and it was perfect because it turns into a family reunion. This is me going back to high school and college and young adult friends, childhood friends, family members, anybody that I knew that ever wrote anything or talked about writing anything. I was able to go back to them and say, hey, I'm doing this anthology. I just need a piece of the work. You don't even have to be finished writing it yet. Do you have 5 pages, 10 pages? Because trust me, by the time we get it in the book, it's going to look more like 20. And so, that's how we get to the concept of the first book. But then I was looking at how many people I wanted to work with. And God even said, it doesn't have to be one book. While you at it, do 3. I was just describing this to my mother and my grandmother the other day, very much the foundations of my spiritual life, but the ones that encouraged me from the beginning. Grandma Alice Johnson, who always said, hold on to those books, sugar, they're going to make us rich someday. I told her the other day, I said, oh, Granny, we getting close. And my mom, who watched me try to figure out what I wanted to do professionally, and she always got that I was looking at practicality of money, because even the Bible talks about the necessities of this world. It's not our God, but, man don't work, man don't eat kind of thing. I think that's in there too. And so, but she was always, what about your writing? What about your writing? I understand that you're thinking about med school. I wanted to be an astronaut until the Challenger blew up. I mean, I want to do it all. And to some degree, I still kind of do. But she was always kind of just that echo. What about your writing? This is your gift. This is your talent. Those are the things she used to say. And so, I circle back around and, oh my goodness, I done went off into that whole story and kind of lost my train of thought. You remind me of the question.
Well, you know what? I'll tell you, I like how you were saying how you wanted to create the Harlem Renaissance. Someone once asked me if I could live in another time. I always tell them to have been alive and been a part of a Harlem Renaissance. How exciting the art, the creativity, the ideals that were just like flowing so freely. And, and I know, and to take that and you go, I mean, because this is, The People is volume 2. The first one was the blood. Blood. I mean, this is some of this that I tell people. Some of storytelling is in our blood because that's how we come alive. Who we were when we got, that helped us make a way out of no way when they were beating us and having us pick up. It was in the blood, that storytelling. So when you said, the moment you said that Harlem Renaissance, it was like, yes, it's so true.
And thank you for that beautiful segue, because you got me back on my track. So it turned into 3, or the idea that I would do 3. And then I was inspired I already knew they were going to be all Black authors. I forgot exactly when and how that decision was made, but I do remember thinking, there are more than enough opportunities for everybody else, particularly our Caucasian counterparts. We do, at different points in history, in different places in society and professions, we have to have our own and kind of exclusive thing. Now, that doesn't mean that we don't share it, and much like the Harlem Renaissance, it was something that was targeted at our people, but it ultimately uplifted everyone. It's an example that someone gave me before, that if you take care of the quote-unquote least of us, you've taken care of everyone. And an example I love to give all the time is the idea of stairs versus a ramp. When you're building a building, only so many people can go up the steps. But if you build a ramp, we can all go up the steps. We can walk up it, crawl up it, wheel up it, what have you. And so, but at any rate, so I looked at it from that standpoint, but then here comes the artistic part of my spiritual life coming together, and kind of like I described it to my mom and my grandmother the other day, I feel like Noah, when God was telling him how to build the ark. If you ever look at that story, he says, go get this much wood, that type of wood, cut it this much, blah, blah, blah. And so somewhere in there, the idea was like, okay, now you have 3 books. You need 3 basic colors. The first one will be red. The second one will be black. The third one will be green. And I said, oh, my God, the Pan-African flag. So I fell in love with the idea that I have to finish all 3 of these books, because when they come together on a bookshelf, there is the flag. So it's what I look at as kind of usable art, in a sense that you can read the book, but it's also decorative. But it just, I don't know, it just, every time I look at the project, I'm constantly looking in every nook and cranny, like, did I cover all the Blackness that I can fit in this? Because I know I can't cover it all with the writers There are only so many of us. There's on average 6 or 7 of us per book. And if you put us all together, counting people that are in multiple volumes, it's about maybe 10 or 12 of us. But, you know, coming back to that universal, maybe someone won't connect as much to some of the stories. Will they connect to the book covers? Will they connect to them as a collection? Will they connect to them as this representation of the Pan-African or liberation flag? Even thinking about the idea that you kind of spoke to it too, the way that we keep ourselves, our history, our identity, our own and alive. There are people who don't know anything past Malcolm and Martin, and that was that was the case when I was in high school, 25 none of y'all business years ago. But you know, so this idea that I also get to teach in a fun and subtle way, you know, what I learned about these principles. You talked about the blood. And a lot of people I would love, and I'll probably do it as a contest to see how many people know, regardless of ethnicity, what is the significance of each color. The red being the blood of our people, the black being our skin, being the representation of us, even though we're not black. You know, that's a whole nother conversation. And then the green being some representation of the homeland, the vibrancy, the fertility, the idea that anything, I mean, kings and queens come out of Africa. And if you want to get into it for real, the Messiah comes out of Africa. If you want to go to science, Lucy, the first skeleton they found, was in Africa. So, you know, so I was constantly looking at all of that. And yeah, so it turns into this not only celebration of our diversity. That was another piece I wanted. I didn't want it to be this thing that, oh, we all do. I really wanted to debunk that idea that we're a monolith. And in this political season, it's a perfect time to look at it. All black people are not voting Democrat. Case in point, example done. But this idea that we write about different things and we dream about different things and we teach and inspire and entertain in different ways. And all of that, I like to look at it as, here's your appetizer sampler of the black perspective, because it goes way deeper than what we're doing in these books. And honestly, you know, without giving anything away, the books have spawned into other projects that aren't even books, but they carry that, actually you said it in your intro and I loved it, but this idea of unity and togetherness, the things that we do together as a collective, as a human race, because there's only one race. The idea of black and white and all this other stuff, and I say it all the time, I'm a nerd and I thank God for these little experiences, but I was like, I took science class and I remember every animal, they have a species, a genus, and a this and a that, but there's only one race. This race thing, and it's been talked about, and it's been, scholars have talked about it, but we have to bring it up every now and again. There is only one race. The more we subscribe to that, the more we leave open the idea that one is greater than or less than the other. We're all made of that same dust of the earth. We just come in variety. And we were meant to, in my opinion, complement each other rather than contrast. I feel that we were meant to remember that we all bleed red. We all breathe air. We all need love, food. We've all experienced love, loss, triumph, things I constantly try to put into the writing. And I feel that this piece does that, and it starts as a conversation, much like the Harlem Renaissance was. It starts as a conversation amongst us. If you even look back to a lot of African traditions and practices, you had the gatherings of the elders. You had the gathering of the village. It was this idea, let's come together and get our house together. Especially when you thought about tribal wars and intertribal wars. You know, let's come together and make ourselves strong, you know, to deal with whatever we have to deal with outside, whether we have to go to war, whether we have to debate, whether we have to negotiate, but let us come together on one accord, even as the Bible says first. And so I feel that this is where we as African Americans, and honestly, everybody, I know they don't really care for the word anymore, and when they give me a better word, I'll use it, but everybody under the African diaspora can look at this and start having some conversations together, but at the same time is available. I made it available. I say it all the time to everybody outside of us. Now, here's, in my opinion, an informed way for someone outside of us, being Black people, capital B, wherever we are on this planet, to enter into a conversation with us about quote unquote race, because now you actually have more perspectives. But you also are seeing that, oh, but none of these perspectives in this book are the same. Oh, they do come in as many as I'd love to say it, and I wrote it on the back. They come with a variety, they being us, and I hate that terminology, they and us, but they come with this variety of values and morals and talents and gifts and dreams and hopes and traumas and backgrounds. And I feel that people outside of us will look at that because it's very much a psychology, social psychology. I learned about this. But when you're in a group, it's very easy and tempting. Your brain just wants to do it. Your brain don't want to do more work than it has to be quite honest. Your brain will look out into the other ethnic group and say they all the same. And it's not necessarily with an evil motivation. It's just simple. It's simpler to label, okay, they all white, they all do thus and so. They're all women, they all do thus and so. They're all gay, but it's wrong in every case. And so the idea of you looking in on another group and seeing the variety that is reflected in your own, you would ideally come into that interaction, those conversations, those business dealings, those worship celebrations, those relationships, and know that, hey, no, this person cannot in any way represent all things Black, but they can give me some insight.
I think the other thing that this series does, it provides an intergenerational bridge from our who would tell their stories. And then it seems like there's a point in time where we got kind of lost, but these children now, with their access to the internet and to do all of it, they kind of see like, I could be anything. They look at the internet and see all I could. And then not only that, but this book provides an intergenerational bridge that says to that, yes, you can be anything because we have been everything.
Exactly. And I don't know, I can't remember. I know I sent you some stuff for the Homeland, the upcoming work. But I really caught on to that more with the people because I looked at our age range. And even when I look at, please, I need people to understand, it's a very artistic brain going on, but it's a very logical brain going on. And honestly, that's why y'all might not see me for a year or two at a time, because running both them engines at the same time, and I'm learning how to manage that better, but it can be a lot. But the artist and the publisher are in my head having conversations about, okay, we have all of the pieces. What order do they go in? And when it came to the people, it was very easy. I can just throw out the example. My short story was an African, fictionalized African tale. I borrowed a lot of things from Chinua Achebe's Things Fall Apart, one of my favorite books. I had to read that book 3 different times in my academic career, and I was happy each time. But I talked about, I placed us in a fictionalized African setting. But then we had pieces like Renee Thomas's My House Cried Tears, and she talked about living through Martin Luther King's assassination. I think she might have touched a little on, no, she didn't touch on Kennedy. Somebody else did. Another writer did. And that's another thing that I look at with all of these writers, a lot of them that I've been working with, and having to tell them, hey, you're not only a writer, you're a historian. Even in my own fiction, when I set the setting, I have to give you place in the sense of time. So I will introduce the issues of the day. One of my stories I talked about, us looking up and seeing that horrible verdict when it came to Trayvon Martin. That's all I have to say about it. But other than the fact that here, this, so you know what time period we're in. But those stories all almost chronologically just fit in the order that they went in, because we started with the beginning of us and kind of skipped, well, kind of but we skipped a lot to get to Renee's piece, and then from there, everybody else's pieces were more contemporary. But so it's our history, it's our culture, it's I look at it with not just pride, but just it has been a labor of love. It has been a labor of love. It has been, and I use the word labor because yes, there is work, but I have enjoyed it. I have enjoyed it. I have enjoyed reading these pieces. I have enjoyed getting to know, and then like I said, a lot of these authors are people I've known for years, but I didn't know them on the level I know them on now, that we're operating in this space, and they're sharing in a lot of cases very, very private things and being very courageous, about how they do it. But like I said, it comes back to this idea of here's this sampler. We gave you as much as we could in 3 books, with as many different authors, with writing, like I said, some of it's fictional, some of it's autobiographical, some of it's more essay, or journalist types of pieces. Some of them are introspective pieces. And so, it's our attempts, and I think we're doing a pretty good job. I feel like I can pat ourselves on the back when I say that we're doing a good job of representing and celebrating all of this diversity, all of this collective power, and ideally inspiring others not only to write, but to look at your gift. And not only look at your gift, but look across. These are people that I've known. This is not me trying to get in with Oprah or whoever else has a huge book. These are people that I know. I love to quote her all the time, Issa Rae. Everybody's familiar with her from the Insecure series. She did an interview, I believe it was with Roland Martin, and she said that I believe our mistake is that we're constantly trying to network up. We're trying to reach up into the stratosphere and pull down a Barack Obama. And what you need is, I even saw that in a biblical perspective, it's at hand. We just get fuzzy on what we have and don't value it. And in my case, it was finally looking up and saying, oh, my God, I have all these great friends, family members, frat brothers, sorority sisters, college roommates, college alumni, masters, alumni. And hey, we can pull together and do this. And we've had a good time doing it. We've made an impact. We're looking at, what more we're going to do. And I really think that when the 3rd one drops and we get a couple of things done, that we're going to finally hit a lot of the dreams a lot of them like to hit me with while we're working. And I'm like, yeah, baby, yeah, we gonna talk to Essence at some point. Yeah, we gonna try to send this to Oprah, but we got to finish the book first. Okay. And but we're done almost. We're almost done. I'm actually looking over at my final reviewer copy of the 3rd book to know for sure. Oh yeah, wow. We're ready to sell.
So we're coming towards the end of our time together. What's next, and who's in your future? I'm hoping it's me.
Of course. Well, first and foremost, let me start off with once again thanking you for inviting me into your home. It's your outlet and everything. We're doing this virtually, but it is very much the same way I appreciate anyone saying, "Hey, Eddie, you can come over to my house." This is your private space. This is a space where I could come in and affect it for ill or for good without doing a whole lot, to be quite honest, And so, but as a thank you to you, and I look at this all the time, and I've said it on so many occasions, man, I look at all these great people that interview, but who interviews them? It's all the things I do to support all these other people, and then you look on and say, oh, I see Eddie doing all this work. Let me support him. So what I'm saying is that between now and the streaming event that we do for From a Black Perspective, February, we have the exact date, but I can't remember right now, and it'll be in some promo very, very soon. I will be having you on RRP Live, my podcast. Looking forward to actually reading your work, writing a review, circulating it everywhere, following it up with an interview. And the scoop of the day, well, actually 2 scoops. We are going to, by the time this drops, I believe you said in a week or so, and I can say it on camera and it'll still be fine. It's no editing for you, and I love that for you. That by the time this drops, we will be in the midst of our pre-sale of the book. And the official release date being November the 12th of 2024. So coming back to that anniversary of the company. And for your listeners, I especially want them to know, look forward to Michelle Elizabeth Brown of Collections by Michelle on blog. Oh, man, I'm messing up. Blog Talk Radio. I got it right. Did I get it right? To be a guest co-host for From a Black Perspective, the Homeland, the virtual streaming release and Q&A event. It's going to be awesome. It's going to be in February. I'll be dropping the date soon. But Michelle is coming in. We thank you for that. I'm saying your name, but I'm also talking to the people. But we're looking for Michelle to come in and just do the amazing things that she already does, that she, helps to set this amazing stage for amazing authors and amazing individuals to come on and just do what they do best, and to just honestly not just get the word out, but propel it out, to that many more voices that we would never, ever reach without your help. So for me, it's part of that thank you. It's that part of that thank you for being my 3rd or 4th time. I know you've done a couple of my people. I know you've done Senya twice. And I know that you're looking at some others, and I'll let you deal with that. But, I just really want them to know the greatness of you. It's not about putting you in the hot seat. It's about putting the spotlight on you. And looking forward to that opportunity when it comes to you being one of the 2 guest co-hosts for the streaming event, which for anybody that needs to understand it, as the guest co-host, she'll be introducing the authors as we do readings. She will be providing questions, so short mini interview segments, and moderating the questions that we get from our live streaming audience. So look for amazing things. Of course, it's always from Michelle Elizabeth Brown, but look for a little Rainbow Room Publishing sauce in the mix to just really, really celebrate who she is and to give back.
Well, Eddie, as always, I am really excited about it and doing it. And, this is who we are, what we do. Not only do we do our own thing, but being a part of lifting, sharing, presenting, providing a platform. This is who we are and what we do. Yes. My brother, another literary mother. Yes. But I know that we'll be talking a lot. It's going and doing it in the coming weeks. More of the authors who you have told me about who are writing in this, I'll be presenting them too. So
thank you.
People will go like, oh, that's so-and-so, here they are because they've already heard and feel that. But Eddie,
and if I could just put it in there real quick, and I'm sorry I'm interrupting. I'm sorry. It doesn't mean that what I'm saying is more important or that I'm more important, but just thank you. Thank you. I need people to understand. I need people to understand how much work goes into this, especially now that I do it. I really get it. But, creating a platform and just looking out there, because, we're both independents and we're in a lot of independents, I'm sure, are listening right now. And it's very easy for us to be so in the work, our heads down, just working, and not always being conscious of who we can help. And and it's always special. It's always special when I find someone, the Bible talks about King David, for all of his issues, being a man after his own heart. But in this case, finding other creative individuals, creative professionals, especially independents, that are people after my own heart that say, okay, I got something I can give too. And if you want to look at it from a business angle, that giving is an investment. You don't always know how it's going to come back, but this is a great example. You invited me in once. and I talk about this all the time, especially when it comes to people with a podcast and interviews, you people have to find content. You have to find subjects. And anytime that someone like me, who comes in and knows your formula, knows the easiest way for you to do this, comes and says, hey, I got 5 people, you can fill 5 weeks of a show.
I mean,
you don't have to do that work. And coming with that all-important press kit so that you don't have to search the whole internet and possibly still get somebody mad at you because they used the pitch. You used the picture they didn't like, but not in a press kit.
Exactly.
You know, the bio has everything, and I love to go ahead and pat myself on the back. But one of the things I started to do, and I was inspired to do it, was, you know, these press kits, the documents. Everybody, when you do this stuff, don't send anybody Word documents. Send them PDFs. Save and preserve your work. You can change a PDF, but it's a little harder. But because I do PDFs, I have the ability, well, you can do it with a Word doc too, but I have the ability to do hyperlinks. And so in those bios now, I am giving people right there in the title. You click the title, you go to where the book is listed, read the reviews, see who bought it, see how much it is, go ahead and buy it. See the statement that says I was interviewed by Michelle Elizabeth Brown, you know, on Collections by Michelle. Click it, boom, I'm right here listening to it, you know. But just this idea that you taught me how much you appreciate when I do that. You inspired me to make it easier. I'm very much the person that believes if you're going to ask someone for help, you do the most you can to make it convenient for them and ideally beneficial. It's not always possible, but where you can, you do. And so, you know, I love you. I love you. I love you as a person. I love you as a person before we get to the professional stuff. I love you as a person. I love everything that I see you do. And you do on everyone's behalf. And that's why, like I said, I'm doing everything I can to make sure everyone knows the name. And not just because you'll also hear my interviews with Michelle, but see the greatness. See the greatness. And be inspired.
I want to thank my guest, the founder of Rainbow Room Publishing, Eddie S. Pierce Jr. With Rainbow Room Publishing, he has published his own works and oversees the company's numerous publishing services while expanding its offerings in an effort to provide opportunities for other creatives. The anthology, From a Black Perspective, is the ongoing manifestation of several collective dreams from artists under the Rainbow Room Publishing umbrella. The Homeland is the 3rd volume in the series. Along with volumes 1, The Blood, and 2, The People, this anthology gathers entertaining, inspirational, and educated voices modeled after the collective creative literacy of the long-celebrated Harlem Renaissance. We'll be back soon with more interviews of individuals living between the lines, standing boldly in the crosshairs of their intersectionality and creating change. You can support Collections by Michelle Blog Radio by following us on Facebook, X, and Instagram, or becoming a monthly supporter on patreon.com. Current and past episodes of the show can be heard on SoundCloud. Stay tuned as we continue to introduce you to more amazing individuals with each broadcast, right here on Collections by Michelle Brown Blog Radio. Thank you for listening.
Rainbow Room Publishing invites you to Homecoming, the virtual reading and Q&A event for From a Black Perspective, the Homeland. Sunday, February 23rd from 1 p.m. to 4 p.m. on